to The People's View. My name is David Schoeneman. I'm your host on today's episode of The People's View. People's View is normally hosted by Carl Seidel. Been filling in for him once in a while. I'm very grateful to Carl for the opportunity. On People's View, we take a look at issues that are important to Nashua taxpayers and voters on the state, local, and a national level. We'd like to take a look at what's happening in the news so that you can be more informed. I've got a panel of experts with me today. I will let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Doris Hohensee. I'm on the National Board of Education.
And I'm Don LeBrun, former representative, former alderman, and now serving the Board of Medicine.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Griffin. I'm a representative from Goffstown. I am in my third term at the State House, and I'm former Speaker Pro Tem of the Republican leadership.
Well, thank you all for coming in. Really glad to have you here. There's a few things that are happening. Anyone who looks at the paper is going to see what's going on in Nashua and what's going on in New Hampshire. Today's front page article on the Union Leader was about this assault case at the Fairgrounds Middle School that has been all over social media. I understand it's in Boston on TV. It's probably in the Boston print media. Nashua is making a name for itself here that is not really the kind of name we want to make.
It's very disturbing, but you know, the good thing is I'm seeing a lot of parents come together over this to say that something has to change. This 12-year-old who was assaulted not once but twice in the middle school, at least that I know of, and the board has not been the board doesn't have any more information than the public does at this point.
When did the first assault occur?
I thought it was maybe the 27th. It was Friday, the week ago, Friday, and then on Monday, but I could have the dates wrong.
So it's about a week old? It happened about a week ago?
I didn't find out till late Monday
But when did it happen? It happened a week or two ago?
I think Monday's assault happened right as they got off the school bus in front of the middle school.
Well, what was the time lag between the time of the assault and the time it made it social media?
It was several days.
Several days. And during those days, what did the
no-
parent want to do? Did he approach the administration or?
I don't have a timeline. I just have what was posted. The parent was frustrated. The parent had talked to the assistant principal, the principal, and the police and felt that he could do nothing to protect his daughter. So he went public because he had these videos, which are very clear and convincing evidence that that girl was punched over and over and over again in the face. So what I'm asking the board to do next Wednesday, when the board meets for the first time as a group, I'm asking that we look at our policy in emergency capacity and make sure that when we have irrefutable evidence like these videos, and there is a physical assault against a student by a student, that the offending student is pulled from the school, not just 1 week, until it's resolved. Because if we had a teacher or an administrator that did something that was unacceptable, we would put them on paid administrative leave.
Immediately.
Immediately, and it wouldn't be 1 week, it would be until it was resolved. We had a case back at Ledge Street School where they were out for 4 to 5 months before it was resolved. There was no talk of ever putting them back in. So
Was that a child-to-child assault case?
no,
or was
that was a teacher
teacher?
doing something that teachers shouldn't do.
Okay.
It was actually a principal and assistant principal.
That's right.
And whatever they did, they resolved it. And there was another teacher that had some confusion or these are investigations. And until the investigation is over, until the issue is resolved, that teacher is gone, unpaid administrative leave. So this student should be at least safe until it's done, till the investigation's over. But right now, I mean, she's had 2 assaults. The father, I understand, went on Tuesday to the police and got restraining orders. Now, that means that the offending student has to be 300 feet away from the victim. How do you operate in one school with that? You can't put them in the same classroom. So, you know, we've now got a legal problem, but at least that parent will have some feeling of safety. I'm asking that the policies change, that when we have the clear and convincing evidence that the offending physically violent student is pulled from the school community until it's resolved.
So there was this clear offense. Anyone who has seen the Facebook video, it's very, very graphic, really.
Very upsetting.
This one girl grabs this other girl and really starts beating on her. And I'm kind of surprised that this was videotaped in the first place. I understand it was the friend of the assailant who did the videotaping. That's what it said in the Union Leader article
That's
today.
what the newspaper's picking up.
So this occurred, and a parent is rightly trying to defend his daughter. in this really hostile environment,
12-year-old.
12-year-old daughter, and didn't get satisfaction going to first the principal or the assistant principals in the school at the fairgrounds. Also went to the police department. I respect our police department completely. I think they do what they can within the law, but couldn't get satisfaction there. And then posted this on social media because he needed some satisfaction
And
for
parents
his.
are rallying around him. They're coming out with their stories. This happened to my son or my daughter, and I will go to the board meeting. I will make a phone call. I will help. This has got to stop. And that's heartening. That
It's very heartening.
We're building a community that says this is not acceptable.
What's surprising to me, though, is that this happens at all. And really, one of the most astounding pieces in the article that I read today was Superintendent Mosley saying, really putting the blame on the father of this child for posting it on social media.
And the people
I think that's
who made,
wrong.
and the person who made the videotape.
So it's almost like you're saying, I'm really sorry that we got caught at this. Is that what's
He's
going
saying
on?
there's consequences.
That's what it
if you
sounds like.
videotape.
That's what it sounds like to
Yeah.
me.
But there's,
Where did this happen? Was this coming to school, getting off the bus? Was it leaving school?
The second one, I don't have all the details, but the second assault, is my understanding, was getting off the school bus. Because you see the school bus in the background, it was in the morning.
So it was on school property.
It was on school property. Because there was a teacher that intervened
Mm-hmm.
after about 10 or 20 punches.
Well, I want to congratulate that father for putting this on social media. I think that the public needs to know, and as much as it may be an embarrassment to the superintendent or to anyone on the school administration, these kinds of things need to be known by the public. We're spending
Absolutely.
a great deal of money.
If it's an
tax
embarrassment,
money.
that's tough.
It's an embarrassment that's tough. And I think that when I hear stories like other parents saying, this happened to my child too, I never heard those stories. So if the public hasn't heard those stories either, then I think it's very good, in spite of what Superintendent Mosley
Yeah,
says, it's
a lot
very
of-
good that this parent
A
posted
lot of
this.
frustration is coming out, and they're sympathizing because they had similar experiences. And this girl has a concussion and maybe a fractured rib. I mean, this isn't just a minor assault.
So the current policy is to just wait and see?
There's talk in our policy GIC about short-term suspensions and long-terms, up to 10 days and up to 20 days. And maybe they have latitude to do more, but I want it mandatory. If you can see that irrefutable evidence that there is physical violence by one student against the other, that student has to be removed from the community until we resolve it.
If anyone wants to see this video, is it still posted online?
Go to some of the newspapers, they usually have a link.
Okay,
And
so
it's
it is
on
available?
Facebook, yeah.
Can you see it on Union Leader? Can you see it on Telegraph? Or is
I've
Telegraph
se-
covering this at all?
Last I first saw it, there was 40,000 views when I first saw it.
All right.
And I'm sure that there's.
So any parents at home who want to take a look can find this. Any concerned
Very
citizens,
upsetting.
taxpayers who want to see what's going on in our middle schools can find this. And I think it's appropriate for folks at home to stand up and to insist that there be better policies and certainly not to blame the parent for posting this. I think it was very good that he did that, even though it's an embarrassment to
Right.
the current administration.
Now, is this believed to be an isolated incident, or is it something that's ongoing and has been
This
ongoing?
girl's incident is been posted. There's other parents that say they have similar stories and they're posting them. So there's a lot of parents out there that are telling their story and to each other. So they're building a community that wants a change. And I'm open to a different change. If what I'm proposing is not right and somebody has a better idea, I'm all for it. But something has to be done, and they're telling us we as a board should stand down and do nothing until the parent goes through the process, the principal, the superintendent, and then a hearing for the board, because everybody has a right to due process. I respect that, but in the meantime, I don't want to hear that there's a third and a fourth and a fifth assault.
Absolutely.
Because the same
that's
two
the
kids
emergency.
assaulted this one girl, and that is an
No,
emergency.
there's two different girls, I don't know for sure, but I heard there were two different girls that assaulted the one victim. But the pictures I saw, it looked like it was the same girl, so I don't know. And I don't really care to know, I just know that when I have evidence like that there's a threat to the safety of all students, that threat needs to be minimized as best we
So
can.
you wanted to call this emergency meeting, or this?
No, we have a meeting, I want an emergency policy. Usually it has to go to committee, and then it comes to the board with a recommendation and we vote. I think the board in this circumstance should make this recommendation, change policy, so the administration, either this case or the next case, however the board decides, so we don't have this heartbreaking story.
And how is the board president or board organization taking your suggestion?
The board president told me it's not an emergency, and told me she's not putting it on the agenda. According to our policy, every board member has the right to add things to the agenda and get the board to vote. She
Again-
took her one vote and said, I'm not allowed, and then I put it on Facebook, and she's relented. So
Good.
the power of the people, just like the parent, use the power of the people to get change.
It's
It
very, very
works.
important. I think it's
But you
obvious
shouldn't
it's
have to go
emergency.
through that to declare an emergency. If this isn't an emergency, as soon as it happened, what is it?
Well, if I could chime in, I think Doris brings up two good points. One is as to the policy and one is as to the event. And I think when we talk about it, we need to understand we have a couple of competing systems. We have Doris and her fellow elected members of the board who are in charge of the school, but we also have some protections out there for juveniles. And the school is entrusted with making sure those protections are in place in regards to not being able to release information, much like an employee, in regards to students' identity or personal information about the children. We also have the police out there who are entrusted by our communities to look into instances of criminal activity. We also have the issue of the school and school facilities having often their own sometimes they have officers on present and they often have their own rules in regards to how they handle an event as compared to by the time the police get involved. And so you have a lot of competing interests and I think all of them are interested in the welfare of the children.
Okay.
You also have an outside system that is a confidential juvenile court system to deal with children who have repeated truant or physical problems in regards to home life, school life in general. And one of the issues is that the school district could be filing paperwork in that regards for children that they believe are in risk and need services, maybe students who are doing the assaultive behavior because they're out of control. But each school district then becomes responsible for the educational needs of that child whenever they get into the system. So on top of all of that, the school districts have to consider the implications to their budget. I am not arguing that they should or shouldn't. I'm just want to point out to everybody who's listening to this tragic story that there are a lot of components to how we get to the point where Doris, as an elected board member, is finding out about things that happen in a school as a member of the community and not a school board member. And that is the second point, which is the fact that we have policies in a lot of our school boards that either aren't followed or maybe need to be changed. In my own school board in Goffstown, there was just an issue that arose in regards to summer reading. And the bottom line is that the policies of the board were not followed last year. And the school board ended up with information being given to them at the last minute, being told, we didn't have a chance to go through our curriculum review, and here's the book, and isn't it wonderful, and approving it, along with workshops and other things. And it's turned out afterwards that maybe that wasn't such a great decision. So the horrific situation here in Nashua in the school, which Manchester has dealt with also, all school districts have dealt with it, really highlights a couple of issues for members of school boards like Doris that need to be addressed.
It's a long and it's a cumbersome process, but safety has to be the number one. And that's what I'm trying to address. Pull the parties apart so that there's safety, so the school community can bring their students, their 12-year-old children, and drop them off feeling that they're going to be safe until they come home at night. So
So
It's a
the school
challenge.
community is not overwhelmed with this one incident and can go on with its process
right.
and isolate this incident and rectify it.
If you had a 12-year-old in that school, you would now be very, very worried what was going to happen.
Absolutely.
So these are young children.
Good, well, thank you. I think it's a meaningful conversation, and certainly a situation we have to keep our eyes on. And there are a lot of conflicting I shouldn't say agendas, but forces that
Right.
all trying to act for the good but still may have a little bit different interests. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. A piece of good news in the education world is this money that has come to the state, or the state coming from the state. I think there's $14 million coming to Nashua and some $20 million. or so
That's
went
the
to
figure that's
Manchester.
being thrown around, yes.
So tell us about that. Where did this money come from? It's out of the current budget that was just passed.
Yes.
And what does it mean for Nashua? What does this money mean for Nashua?
If, in fact, Nashua gets the $14 million, then that will be split up among different public schools. There are a lot of figures that have been put out there as to who's getting what. Nothing is set yet. I spoke with Commissioner Edelblu a week or so ago, and at that time he had no idea. He couldn't even begin to give me a guesstimate as to what people would get.
Well, that's a big task too.
Yeah.
$14 million
Yeah.
is a lot of money, and you like to say, well, everyone gets the same, but you know, do we do it in the same based on school population, or do we do it based on need, or based on ward? All kinds of factors play into effect there too. So
That's correct.
We are looking forward to an influx of funds for the educational system here in Nashua, as are other cities and towns across the state. And again, this came out of the compromise budget that Governor Sununu signed just last week.
Just last week, yeah.
And I'm glad that was resolved, because this is money that was now freed up, that he's been able to get for us, that I think is gonna help this city and help others. That's good news. Let's talk a little bit more about what's happening in Concord these days, because you folks are here. Don, you've been up in Concord for a while in the past, and of course you are now currently. We have some legislation that's coming up again. It seems like we've talked about some of these same things. It was recently vetoed or made through the process, but now it's all coming back. What's happening?
Well,
Well-
I'll let Dawn address the actual bills, but just from a process standpoint, we're in the middle of what some people refer to as the crazy season up in Concord, which is when elected state reps can submit requests for bills or new laws. And there are over 700 of them for this upcoming year, with over 900 having been addressed this past year.
Just what we need, 700 more
There you
laws.
go. So sometimes the question for your state rep is not what have you proposed, but maybe what are you not proposing. So those requests go into an office that helps legislators draft the bills. They end up as LSRs, which are legislative service requests that ultimately become a bill and have a number assigned to them. So you can get online on the House website and you can see the titles of the bills or LSRs as they're coming through the system. But you can't tell exactly what they are. But when you look at them, you have to remember that just because you might have heard about a bill that just got vetoed or dealt with doesn't mean you're not going to hear about it again. Because in the land of legislatures, unless a bill is deemed inexpedient to legislate
By the House or
by
the
the
Senate?
House, by the Senate, so that the issue was addressed and the
it's been
session
killed.
decided it wasn't going to do it, your elected state rep is free to bring it back.
So let's just do it all over again. So
And
Don,
that's
what's happening
exactly
specifically?
what's happening with the gun bills. You've got a representative from Concord that has brought back 3 bills that were vetoed by the governor last
Are these the same
last
bills?
year. These are basically the same bills. Because they were vetoed, they can be brought back again this year. If they had not been vetoed, then you can't bring the same bill back within that term.
Tell us about the 3 bills, these 3 gun bills.
They're the same thing that the Democrats have been preaching for forever.
One
They're
is?
background checks for
Right.
before you can or when you purchase a gun, a waiting period, 7-day waiting period
For anything.
for anything, and an assault on gun shows and individuals being able to sell, say, to a neighbor or a friend or something like that.
I see.
But these are the same bills over again, and they're being brought forward by a representative who has been convicted of assault herself. So she's telling people, you shouldn't have a gun because you're not fit. But if she wants to have a gun, she's got an assault record behind her. She basically hit another representative at a election recount.
Well, if
When
I
did this
just can
happen?
be clear, because we're talking about, I don't actually think it was another representative. It was somebody, it was a member of the public present at a recount. I just want to make sure
Okay,
that,
so
I thought it was a representative,
no,
but
it was-
you may be right.
yeah.
But nevertheless, she took it on her own at a recount, an election recount, to lose her temper and swat somebody across the face.
And she's an attorney.
And she is an attorney.
Okay, so these bills are coming back, and they went through the House and the Senate already. They passed the House and the Senate, democratically controlled House and
Yes.
Senate. Do they pass strictly on partisan lines, would you say?
More or less,
Do
yeah.
you expect any
Yeah.
different vote this time around?
There are some Democrats who own guns and are not for these types of bills. I mean, that happens, but then again, there are some Republicans that are against guns. So, it was a mix of votes,
So
but
since
nevertheless,
Since the bills are essentially the same as they were before, we can expect the vote to be essentially the same as it was
probably,
before, right?
yes.
And then, can we expect the governor to do the same thing he did before?
I would hope so.
So here we're doing the exact same thing. I was going to say we're wasting taxpayers' money.
Well, the worst
$100 a
part
year,
is
we're
they
not
can
wasting
then
money.
be brought back at the first year of another session. The same bills can be brought back again, 3 years in a row. 4 years if they're vetoed again.
So if
Can
he
go on and
vetoes
on.
it, is there an expectation that someday he's not going to veto this? Or someday there's a different outcome?
I
What was
would-
it that Einstein said? He could
I would
do the
hope there
same
wouldn't be a
thing and
different
expect a
outcome with
different
this
outcome?
governor.
I don't think that there will be either. So it sounds like it's a waste of time
It is. It is.
to make some kind of a.
It's just grandstanding, that's all it is.
Well, I think it's become pretty clear that a lot of people are trying to make hay out of the fact that our governor has vetoed, at this point, the most bills than any other governor. And they're trying to somehow pin that on him as being not in the best interests of
see.
the community of New Hampshire. And the reality is, I think that the last time we had a governor of one party and chambers of the other party was like in the Civil War or something, a really long time ago. And our most recent governor, who was a Democrat, there were Republican chambers, or in the past there have been split chambers. So what happens is bills that maybe don't make a lot of sense to everybody might hit a backstop in either the Senate or the House. When you have the same party in both chambers in the majority,
backstop.
there's no backstop. So Governor Sununu was faced with more what I would refer to as partisan bills, sort of more of a policy nature than any other governor in recent history
probably
because
true.
of that.
Right.
So he said he was going to take out the red veto pen, and he did. And
Well,
it's
we're very grateful for that.
well, I think when you start to listen to the numbers, like 900 bills last year and at least 700 bills this year, vetoing 50 doesn't sound like a huge amount to me.
No, it isn't that many. But the things that he vetoed, I think, were for common sense purposes.
Well, I believe it was 58 that he vetoed actually, and then there's 3 more. Aren't they 3 pending now?
There's a couple more pending. We've had veto day, which is a day that all the representatives are called back to vote. We went through the majority of them. I think there are a couple left and maybe a few more bills coming because of the way the bills trickle through the system. But we probably won't actually vote on those till January when we go back. I don't think we're expecting anybody back in Concord between now and the end of the year.
Well, good. I think that Governor Sununu did a great job vetoing these things. And anyone who wants to register a complaint against Governor Sununu for having vetoed so many, I think should understand the point you made about the division right now in Concord, and should also understand that when compromise is important and necessary, he comes through. I think if we look at the current budget, the budget that he signed recently, that there's some good compromises in there. It includes the money for schools. It includes kind of squashing the income tax proposals that were out there. So these are things that he's able to work with other people on and develop a solution that I think seems to suit the folks at home. And in the end, I think we want a government that is responsive and responsible to the folks at home. And I think he's produced that.
Well, currently his approval rating is at something like 76% or something like that. So he's doing a good job for somebody.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, great. Let's just touch on one more thing that's happening in Nashua before our time is out here. And I want to talk a little bit about the proposals for the new middle schools. We have 3 middle schools currently. We've got Elm Street Middle School, we have Fairgrounds, and we have Pennachuck.
Right.
And periodically, as the city looks at the various schools, there's renovations that go on and school buildings are updated. And we did the 2 high schools a number of years ago. We've done various elementary schools, but now there's talk about doing something with the middle schools.
Well, Elm Street is the one that either needs to be rehab or a new building. So
The other 2 we're not contemplating new buildings
they,
for those.
initially they were not, And initially, we talked about bringing Brentwood into the Elm Street, or Brentwood into the central office and the administration into Elm Street, because we have a separate rented facility for that. But that seems to have disappeared. About a year and a half ago, we sent the issue over to the Joint Special School Construction Committee to do studies, soil samples, and things like that. And I thought, and I think the board thought, and give a report back for the board, because it is our responsibility as a board to approve the plans. But right now, the Joint Special Committee thinks that they are making all the decisions from here on in. The mayor's already talking about low-income housing in that building,
In the Elm Street School building.
in the Elm Street School building. And the big problem is that beautiful theater. We've got to keep the theater. And those middle school students had enjoyed it. So you're taking that away from the middle school community and putting them in this other place that will be, it'll be expensive. And then how does that affect the traffic flow over there on the southwest quarter?
How much money are we talking about overall project costs
The
for whatever's going to be
money
done?
started at 40 and 50 million, now it's up to 70, 80 million,
So-
and it'll probably grow.
And we're still in the throes of
preliminary.
declining enrollment.
Declining enrollment. They were trying to take the 1,200 students in Elm Street and split them up into all three, so there'll be 800 in each, to make them all the same size. So they've got a lot of things on their plate all at once, and to give equity to all of them. So they've got to figure out which way they're going, and hopefully they're going to come back to the board and follow the law, because we approve as a board, not this special committee, what plans are to be made.
Well, certainly it involves a lot of money, and folks at home need to be aware of the fact that these things are being discussed.
There are
And I
meetings.
think there's a lot of public interest too in the Keefe Auditorium, which is a beautiful theater that the New
gorgeous.
Hampshire Symphony uses. So we need to keep these things available to folks, because there's a lot of multi-use going on with the space that is very important to people overall. So we're going to follow that more. We'll see what's going on in the future. We're nearly out of time. I want to thank you all for coming in. It's always an enjoyable
Thank you, David.
conversation. Thank you for the things
Appreciate
we
it.
talk about here. And thank you, too, folks at home, for tuning in. We're glad to have you watch. This is The People's View. My name is David Schoeneman, and we'll see you next time.